So welcome everyone. For those who I don't know, my name is Jackie Aldrete, and I am the executive director of AFC USA. And we at AFC have put together this evening as part of what our small, modest initiative here in the United States, which we call the Restorative Freedom Initiative. And we started this initiative about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was born because many friends of ours, and us included, had begun having experiences visiting people in prison and supporting reentry programs and experiences as people came out. And the experience of accompanying others who were going through that particular life experience was very valuable for us as human beings and for our faith, and to understand really what it for many aspects. I think, and I think there's a journey of discovering so much about ourselves and about our life and about our friendship in Christ as we accompanied friends who were in prison or leaving. And so the Restorative Freedom Initiative came about as a very flexible way that we could continue to stay in touch with friends who are also having a similar experience, and to support some of our friends who began reentry programs to continue to serve in that way. And so the Restorative Freedom Initiative works to support a couple of reentry homes around the country. Joshua Stansel is with us here. I can see him on the screen. He founded Living with Convictions in North Carolina, where some of our friends have been volunteering. And then there's another home a group of homes in Denver called My Father's House. And then we've recently started working with Father Zach Prosciutti and his collaborators at Thrive for Life in New York City. And so that's one part of what we do as Restorative Freedom Initiative. And because we began this journey from the experience of people who were volunteering in this setting, we wanted also to continue to accompany each other, to continue to understand what this experience means for us and for our friends, and to deepen that experience. So for a while, Simonetta in particular has been hoping to have a moment where those of us kind of who are closer friends, and then also a wider group of friends, as we've gathered here tonight, can come together and simply reflect together about what this kind of work means for us, what we're learning, and in a hope that we deepen the experience and gain from it, gain all the richness from it that we can, and of course sustain each other in the work, because we also know that it's not simple. We thought it was appropriate to do this during Lent. There's a lot of things that we can learn that connect very well with what we're all trying to do during Lent, as we kind of reflect on our own sinfulness and our own need for mercy and for the resurrection. So that's, with that little background, we have gotten to know Bishop Mark Bartosic from Chicago. And so we've asked him if he wouldn't mind joining us tonight and just sharing his own reflections and helping us to kind of enter in to what this ministry is all about and what it offers to us. So Father Mark, over to you. He's going to share with us some of his own reflections, and then afterwards Simo will share a few thoughts, but then really the floor will be open for anyone who wants to share anything about what they've been experiencing, or questions, or just any reflections that could benefit all of us. So Father Mark, again, thank you for being with us, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Jackie, and greetings to everyone. It's an honor to share this with you tonight. So for 2 years, I was the director at Colby House in Chicago, the jail ministry. I had no experience at all. I was just sort of burned out with parish work. Not insignificantly, throughout my priesthood, which has been very happy and very fulfilling, I've often wondered, why did I spend 6 years as an actor here in Chicago before I finally went to the seminary? Somehow, my whole life is part of the story of how I am called to be a saint. And so, as a little bit by way of warning, I want to share a little anecdote with you. I was in a class um, with Peter Wood, who was a director of the National Theatre of Great Britain when I was in my early 20s. And it was a master class here in Chicago at DePaul University. And one of us got up and performed a monologue from the Scottish play, uh, Macbeth. And when it was done, Peter was silent for a moment and he looked at the guy. It wasn't me. And he said, "Don't tell me what it means. I know what it means." And that just hit me right between the eyes. And so I say, by way of warning, I tell you that because it's the way I preach. And it's also the way I read the scripture, wherein we discover the person of Jesus, but you'll never be able to say what Jesus means. You'll never exhaust that. And as I was going into the jail, very soon I realized I needed something. What do I have to give them that could possibly ease their pain and give them hope? And I mean, my friendship, my time, my faith, I can share that with them. And so, what is my faith? There was a lot of confusion about that in the jail because people would see my collar and say, "Whoa, can't talk to you. I'm a Christian." Um, so I came up with this thing called the Five-Fingered Catechism, which I would say is what links all of us who are Christians, the core beliefs. And the first one is that the Word became flesh, that Jesus Christ is truly God and truly man. And the second point is that he gave his life for us on the cross. The third one is that we can have a personal relationship with him. He became our brother. The fourth one is that he tells us that we can call his Father our Father, so that the one who has only one son um, has allowed that son to come so close to us that when he looks at that one son, he sees us. So the Word became flesh and gave his life for us on the cross. We can call him brother. We can call his Father our Father, which is why we want to be good to each other. That's the fifth point. And so when I went into the jail, I wanted to make sure that I was always talking about Christ and only Christ. When I was with you, says St. Paul, I resolved that I would speak of nothing but of Jesus Christ and of him crucified. And like, if that isn't enough, like if I need something more than that, I'm sunk. Uh, so that's kind of the framework for my comments tonight. I'm not going to tell you what anything means. I, I, I think of it in the same way that Mark talks about um, here in chapter 2, I think. He said, "This is how it is with the kingdom of God. It is as if a man were to scatter seed on the land and would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow, he knows not how. Of its own accord, the land yields fruit, first the blade, then the ear, then the fruit, full grain in the ear. And when the grain is ripe, he wields the sickle at once, for the harvest has come." So the truth of our faith has its own power. I am convinced that all you have to do is tell the truth about who Jesus has revealed himself to be. And another experience that really marked me is just the time in jail is something quite different, just the sense of time passing or not passing. Um, like, what is it that could hold someone what could you, if you have nothing in your room but a toilet and a bunk, well, how about thinking about the Word becoming flesh? How about thinking about how in one man, in one person, a divine and a human nature, a divine and a human will, a divine and a human reason can coexist, and that this person is your brother, and that his father, who is God, is your father too. Um, so anyway, that's sort of the preamble. A number of years ago, a friend of mine wanted me to read his book. It was a book about the 3 days that Jesus spent lost in Jerusalem. And it was 9 hours of not very fruitful, audio book in the car. And um, his whole premise was that there was this massive misunderstanding that resulted in Jesus remaining in Jerusalem. And right at the same time, I finally read this wonderful book that one of my seminary professors had given me years earlier, written by an English Benedictine named Maria Bolding. It's called The Coming of God. And so this is what Maria Bolding says about the very same passage, which I will read to you. Um, Each year, his parents went to Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to festival custom. After they had completed its days, as they were returning, the boy Jesus remained behind in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know it. Thinking that he was in the caravan, they journeyed for a day and looked for him among their relatives and acquaintances, but not finding him, they returned to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astounded at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished, and his mother said to him, "Son, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been looking for you with great anxiety." And he said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he said to them. He went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. And his mother kept all these things in her heart. And Jesus advanced in wisdom and age and favor before God and man. So again, my friend in his book, his premise is that it was all a massive misunderstanding, but this is what Maria says. On finding him, Mary says, "Your father and I have been searching for you with great anxiety." And he asks her, "How is it that you sought me?" As later in the garden, he will ask another woman, "Whom are you looking for?" He takes up Mary's phrase, "your father," but uses it in a different sense. Did you not know that I must be in my father's house? He has acted out in prophetic sign his paschal return to his father. Yet, the incident has all the psychological naturalness of an adolescent's impulse to claim his freedom, and even of a mistake on the part of a boy who has just broken through to a new and dizzying realization that God is his father and has drawn the wrong conclusion as to what action is appropriate. That was just a lightning rod for me. It was such a moment of clarity. Jesus has made a great big adolescent mistake in his human nature, in his human reason, and in his human will. He has decided that since I'm the Son of God, I don't have to do what my parents tell me. And he's wrong. And of course, we know that Jesus is without sin, but we can be wrong without sinning, right? Especially when we're immature. And I've encountered active resistance among my bishop friends to this notion that because he's the only begotten Son of God, even as a 12-year-old boy, even as an infant, he knows everything and he wills only the good. And that you can say that of the one divine person, right? You can say that in Jesus, God knows everything and God wills everything. But you can also say that God made a mistake because of his human nature, which if it doesn't need to be developed, if it doesn't need to grow and mature, as as this passage says, that he went home uh, with them and was obedient to them, and he advanced in wisdom and age and favor before God and man. So I think this is super important. You're not free until you reach maturity. I mean, that's a very old philosophical Greek idea. Children are not free until their minds become fully capable and their hearts become fully capable. Um, so if Jesus' human reason and his human will were truly human, they were subject to change and development. And I think there's something freeing in that, for anybody who's made a mistake in his or her life. Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, Jesus says. But that word perfect means that when you get to the end, right? When you become that which you are meant to be. And that is a process for all of us. Um, so um, I want to share another equally important um, scripture passage for you, with you. And this is at the other end of Jesus' hidden life. Actually, the end of his hidden life, the wedding at Cana. This is from the second chapter of John. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran short, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servers, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washings, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told them, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Draw some out now and take it to the head waiter." So they took it. And when the head waiter tasted the water that had become wine without knowing where it came from, although the servers who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom and said, "Everyone serves good wine first, and then when people have drunk freely, an inferior one, but you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this as the beginning of his signs in Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory, and his disciples began to believe in him. So these same bishops that I mentioned a minute ago, they will not say that Jesus didn't want to do that. They will not say that Jesus kind of talked back to his mother again, at the age of 30. But I don't know how you make any sense out of either one of these two stories from the life of Jesus without the idea that Jesus' reason and his will are not yet fully mature. Or I would say that when his mother gives him this little push, that's it. His hour has come, right? She pushes him right out of the nest. His hour is his passion that we're going to celebrate on Sunday, his suffering and death. It's not here yet. And she says, "Oh, yes, it is." He doesn't want the attention that is going to result in his ministry, which is ultimately going to lead to Calvary. He thinks he's not ready yet, but his mother knows better. And in that, she's sort of like the mother of the church. It's the church saying, yes, we need you to do this right now. And you're ready as you'll ever be. And this is, I don't know, I'll tell you later, like my mother was very important in, you know, fledging me, pushing me out of the nest in ways that I think we can do for each other. We have to do for each other. This Hebrew expression, what is this to me and you, that Jesus says to his mother? It's a Hebrew expression, quote, carrying tones of refusal or at least unwillingness to get involved in whatever the part petitioner is concerned about. Again, maybe this seems like a rabbit hole to you, but the number of commentators who won't say that Jesus didn't want to do this. And another definition of the phrase in Hebrew carries the idea of hostility. And so freedom comes when you're grown up enough to know what's right and to want to do it with all your heart. And it's a lifelong process. And I think we get Jesus wrong if, he's speaking and keeping himself clean and, working miracles when he's an infant. As a matter of fact, there's a reason that all those stories didn't make it into the Bible, because orthodoxy insists upon his true humanity, which means wounded, wounded with weakness at the very least. If Jesus wasn't weak, he couldn't have been killed. And so just tremendously important, I think, for our consideration of freedom. The idea that it's something you grow into. The heart becomes free as the reason becomes fuller and more informed. And yeah. Let me share something for a moment here from the letter to the Galatians. This is from chapter 4, the beginning. Paul is talking about, well, I won't tell you what he's talking about. I won't tell you what it means. I mean that as long as the heir is not of age, he is no different from a slave, although he is the owner of everything, but he is under the supervision of guardians and administrators until the date set by his father. In the same way, we also, when we were not of age, were enslaved to the elemental powers of the world. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to ransom those under the law, so that we might receive adoption. As proof of that, you are children. As proof that you are children, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying out, Abba, Father, so that you are no longer a slave, but a child, and if a child, then also an heir through God. So this is what I wanted to communicate. This is the only thing I wanted to communicate to the guys in jail. That the Word really became flesh, and he really gave his life for us on the cross. He calls us friends, and he gives us his Spirit, which is what cries out, Abba, to God, Daddy. And the Spirit is telling the truth, but he's inside of us. So we're telling the truth when we go to God and we say, Father, Daddy, as Jesus does on the cross. And that's why we want to be good to each other. It's the most compelling reason that we want to be good to each other. It's the inexhaustible source of energy and enthusiasm and charity for people who want to be good to each other, that the word became flesh. Sit in your cell for the next 20 years and think about that. The word really became flesh. He really gave his life for me. I can really call him friend. His spirit is really in me, calling out Abba to the Father and telling the truth. Um, and this is a process because I'm human. I'm subject to passion. I change, hopefully for the better. Um, so let me tell two little stories. Leo the 13th, not this Leo, but the last Leo, in an encyclical Libertas, Liberty. He says, even the heathen philosophers clearly recognize this truth, especially they who held that the wise man alone is free. And by the term wise man was meant, as is well known, the man trained to live in accordance with his nature, that is, in justice and virtue. So once again, it's a lifelong process of learning from your mistakes, of learning from your less than perfect attempts at doing the right thing, and of setting the bar ever a little bit higher, uh, a, a goal, um, something devoutly to be wished, the gift of freedom. Um, so, two little uh, stories to bracket this. I applied to three colleges from my little hometown in Ohio. One of them was Notre Dame, and I was not accepted. And maybe 10 years ago, my mom died in 5 years ago. So maybe 5 years before she died, which would have put her at about 90 years old. I was reflecting upon the fact that I was uh, not accepted by Notre Dame University. And we hadn't talked about this. So this was probably in 1995. And wait a minute, she died 5 years. Yeah, so it was probably about 1995. We hadn't talked about this probably in 35 years. I don't think we ever talked about it. But I mentioned, I didn't get, yeah, remember I didn't get accepted into Notre Dame. And like a shot, she said, well, it was that stupid essay you wrote, you know? And it was a pretty stupid essay, I have to say, but I thought it was great when I was 18. It was all about how I was in the talent show and, Ruth and I were singing Summer Nights from Greece and they were going crazy, Danny Zuko and whatever her name was. Um, but she remembered that and she will, I don't remember this at all, but she will have told me, Mark, do you really want to write that essay? Are you sure that you want to write about the talent show in high school when you're trying to get into one of the best colleges in the country? Is that really what you want to do? And I would have said, yes, mother, that's exactly what I want to do. That's what I'm going to do, mom, you know? And she let me. I am absolutely eternally indebted to that woman for allowing me to fail, for not grabbing it and writing her own essay for me, or forcing me, to think about it a second time. And that woman said nothing after, I'm sure, challenging me on it as gently as she could, and then backing off. And then 35 years later, as only she could do, saying, Well, it was that stupid essay you wrote that kept you out of Notre Dame. Uh, thank God. Um, Incidentally, I went to Marquette for a year and made no friends and got great grades. And then I got involved in the theater program at my hometown. College, undergraduate enrollment of 3,000, no Catholics on the campus. Moved to Chicago to be an actor, got disillusioned, started thinking about the priesthood, and went to the seminary having been told by Peter Wood, don't tell them what it means. I know what it means. And then one other story, and this is something that didn't happen to me, but it is the most beautiful story from my 2 years in jail ministry. It was something told by the deacon who is or was, I'm not sure he is anymore, the Colby House rep at the Lake County Jail north of Chicago. So he went in there every week to do a communion service, a liturgy of the word, and a communion service. And I will have told all of my volunteers that the word became flesh and gave his life for us on the cross. And we can have a personal relationship with him, and his father is our father. And that's why we care. That's why our lives matter. They matter for all kinds of reasons, but all of those reasons pale in the light of the word becoming flesh and giving his life for us on the cross, and the relationship that we can have to the word because of his flesh, and the relationship that we can have with his Father through the Spirit of them both, which is given to us. I said, talk about that. Resist the temptation to talk about anything else. And if you do talk about something else, let it shed light on that mystery, the mystery of the word becoming flesh. So, out of the blue one day, Deacon Bill tells this story about going in for a service of the word with communion in the Lake County Jail. And after a number of weeks, he starts to recognize this guy who's always standing in the back. And jail is a place of tremendous change. It's where you go before you're sentenced. So people are coming and going from jail in ways that are not similar to prison, where how long you're going to be there. And so the turmoil and the upset is much greater in jail. And so Deacon Bill is describing this big, scary looking guy who's standing in back, and he never says a word. He comes every week, which is unusual, and he comes for a long time, meaning week after week after week after week after week. He's in jail for a long time. He comes every single week, and he never says anything. And one day, the guy comes up to Bill and he says, I just want to say thank you. And Bill is like, wow, like ding, 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 ding. This is fabulous. And, without trying to make too big a deal out of it, he just kind of shrugs and says, well, great, look forward to seeing you next week. Because you really want to respect a person's integrity. You don't want to sort of force yourself on somebody. That's part of the law of, ministry to incarcerated people. They need some agency. They need to be able to initiate any sort of, you don't want to ever force yourself on a person. And the guy just kind of shook his head when Bill said, I'll see you next week, and said, no, I just wanted to say thank you. And so Bill figures out, okay, he's probably his trial is over. He's probably been sentenced. And he says, well, listen, you know, if at any time, we can help you with food or, transportation or clothing or something, you can just always look us up in Colby House if that need ever becomes, if you ever have those needs, meaning, when you get out of prison, if that's where you're going. And the guy just shook his head and he said, no, listen, I just wanted to say thank you. And he turns and leaves. But Bill is overcome with curiosity now, and he does what we try not to do. He wants to find out who this is. So he takes the sign-in sheet and figures out what is that guy's name and Googles the guy's name and reads the story of what he did and reads the sentence of life in prison without possibility of parole. And that's the story of a guy who came week after week after week to hear a volunteer talk about the word becoming flesh and being like us in all things but sin, and giving his life on the cross, and of calling us friends. I no longer call you slaves, I call you friends. And putting inside of us his own spirit, which is the spirit of the love between the Father and the Son, so that there's a voice inside of us calling out, Father, and it's telling the truth, even though that voice is talking to God. He's telling the truth about us because he's inside of us. And that's why our lives matter. And this guy heard that. This guy who did something that Bill told me, but I won't tell you what he did or what he was convicted of. And he will be in prison for the rest of his life with no possibility of parole. And he came up to a prison minister and said, thank you. That is pretty darn wonderful. And I have 6 minutes left, and I'm going to give them back to Jackie.
Thank you so much, Father Mark. That was Bishop Mark. That was great. But let me actually turn us over just straight to Simo. Simo, please share whatever you'd like, Simo.
Okay. There is a lot of noise here. I don't know if you know. There's a group of charismatics. They are really playing hard, beautiful songs. But so I'm just going to read what I wanted to share, because tonight I think what Bishop Mark said to me, it was just like, I can just leave now and sleep over and just, that's enough. That's enough. But I'm going to do what I was asked to do. And so thank you so much, Bishop Mark, for this beautiful reflection tonight. I want to tell you the reason why I asked Bishop Mark to lead this moment. It really goes back to when I met Bishop Mark in Chicago. Pat was there, and it was during a retreat for prison ministry. At the time, Bishop Mark helped me see that this kind of charitable work, this volunteering work, the prison, and outside the prison, a reentry house, where my friend and I, my husband, is here tonight. It's not possible, this kind of work is not possible without a sense of something greater and without the simplicity and humility to allow Jesus to wash our feet, to entrust ourselves and the people we meet to him, like Bishop Mark said so beautifully in the 5th point, so that we can learn to love and to forgive as he does. So I'm visiting people at Rikers in a jail here, so I kind of understand very well what Bishop Mark was saying about jail. And there I have learned that many people I met are facing their mistakes with a deeper awareness, and often with real pain, especially when those mistakes have caused suffering to others. I remember particularly a woman a mother that I visited many times. She's been too long there at Rikers, and 3 years is too much. It should never be like that, but she's there, and she paints on the sheets of a bed. It's the only thing that she can use. And she showed me this tree that she made with all the people of the families, of her family. At one point, she stopped and she couldn't tell me who was that person. Only weeks later, she said, she shared with me that that person was her son, who she killed. Through visiting people at Rikers, I have learned that many are facing these mistakes, and they really are. It's so painful. It's really painful. It's not easy to face your mistakes. So years ago, I began visiting someone in prison. At the beginning, I had all sorts of ideas about how I should act, or what I should say, or how I should do this. But every time I left, I realized that I was the one being changed. Something in me shifted, and it's something that I experience all the time. Little by little, I was freed from my own preconceptions. I've come to see that it is often an unexpected encounter that can change everything in one's life. And I have learned that simply showing up for someone is both very simple and at the same time a profound commitment. Above all, a commitment that you make to yourself. I have also learned that I cannot do this without the support of my community and the friendship that I found both a spiritual and a human nourishment. So I have a great privilege to work with Jackie Aldrete, Cecilia, Maria, many other people in AFSI who really care for people, and I'm learning from them all the time. So I serve as a coordinator of the Restorative Freedom Initiative, which is not a program. I cannot call it a program, but an effort to support reentry houses like the Ignatius House, where here my friend and my husband, we started to do charitable work. My father's house, and of course, Living with Convictions. Joshua is here, the founder of this NGO and the reentry house. There we encounter people who are no longer in prison, but are facing the very real and often dramatic challenge of being free again in a society that does not always want to deal with their needs or their desire to begin again. And I was saying most of the time, they really don't want to deal with the people that I mentioned. We just don't want to deal with them. In this work, I have come to understand something more clearly. Justice begins as a recognition of what has been done, but it can only be completed as love, as charity, because the value of the person is infinite. And this is why justice is fulfilled only in charity. This is a real experience for me. I would like to end with something that a formerly incarcerated man shared with us last Sunday at the reentry house in Harlem, Yeshua's house, where my friend and I volunteer, we do charitable work. Our visits there are simple. We begin with Mass in the house with the residents. Most of the time, Father Zach will celebrate Mass. Followed by a conversation, sometimes singing with them together or sharing a meaningful experience. Last Sunday, we invite them to join the Way of the Cross over the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's been a tradition in our community to organize here in New York. And so we decided to share with the residents the meaning for us of following Christ during the procession of a Way of the Cross. And one of them said to us, "But who can forgive you when you have taken someone's life?" So there are no easy answer to question like that. And after nearly 3 years of charitable work at the reentry house, hearing things like this again and again, I have learned how important it is not to take anything for granted. So I would like to invite all of you now to continue this moment that I really long to have with Bishop Mark and with all of you, into a conversation or question that we have with Bishop Mark. And first of all, I really thank you for being here tonight. So here to you. Jackie, you're going to moderate it because my voice is gone. So.
Simo, sorry, this is Rochelle. I wanted to tell you that I'm here now. I wasn't able to talk earlier, but here I am. Hi, Bishop Mark.
Rochelle,
Good to see you.
since you took the mic.
Thank you for the book.
Since you took the mic, Rochelle. Okay, I see Henry's hand is up, but would you like to share anything? I mean, what any of this resonates with you or touches upon something that you've also experienced that's been important for you?
Yeah. Hey, Henry, I think I remember you. You're in New York, yes?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. It's good to see you.
You too.
I remember us chatting. Yes, I mean, of course, yes, I was actually a deacon came to talk to me yesterday about ministering to homeless people. And I realized when I was talking to him that I've been working with the poor and mostly the incarcerated. It's more than 20 years now, which makes me feel very old, but also it's 20 years of just real preciousness. And so I resonated with as they say in Italian, the commotion that I heard and saw in Bishop Mark's face and also in Simo's face as they told their stories, because I have 20 years of that. So I feel very preferred, very loved. So by doing that, but it was interesting. One of the things that I was thinking about was as Sima was talking about forgiveness, and actually a professor, I was at Belmont Abbey College today, and one of the professors was talking to me about her experience of people who've been through the criminal justice system and what these people that she talked to, what they always have said about public defenders. So I'm a lawyer, I'm a public defender, if I haven't met you yet, and I work in North Carolina, there was a connection between what she was telling me, which was that most of the people that she knew from Durham, North Carolina, talked negatively about their public defenders. Oh, my public defender did this, and my public defender did that. And the deacon who came to speak to me came to complain about discovering that a man who he had been working with for more than a year and dedicated a ton of time to, and had gone to court for him, and they had like bought him lots of things and just really, really got involved in his life, that he came to complain that he discovered that this man was lying. And it was a funny moment because he was telling me this, and I think he was expecting me to react a little differently, but I just said, yeah. And he was like, but he's lying to me. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, but how do I trust anything he says? And I'm like, why does that even matter? Because ultimately, and this was the connection with the other professor, was her slow realization as she was talking to me that maybe the people she had heard these things about, my public defender did this, my public defender did that, were kind of telling her piecemeal, right? A piecemeal story. And similar, this deacon, I said, Deacon Zeke, I think I'm very excited for you because now you can learn what charity is. And he was very surprised, but I said, if you realize that people are maybe not telling you everything about them, and that there are things they might be withholding from you, you can begin to ask the question, why, right? What wounds are they bearing? What fear do they have that you won't help them if you know who they are? What is it that they hide from themselves? What is it that that keeps them up at night? That makes them wander, that makes them sleep outside. Have you ever asked that question? Why they sleep outside? What keeps them out there, despite all the challenges that they have? And he was just like, but he lied. And which is, fine. We'll see each other again and I'll ask him how it's going. And because the challenge is sometimes it's when I think one of the beautiful things about my work has always been that over time, I love those moments when my clients discover that I know they're lying. And that they're not telling me the truth, or they're maybe, whatever, they're sort of twisting things or whatever. And I just engage with the truth. And I actually love that because it is such a great opportunity for me to be embraced in my own humanity, but also for them to realize, and I'm going to stand right next to you and I'm going to help you. And you know what? I love you. And I love it more knowing exactly what's real. And for them, that is like life-changing because suddenly someone actually knows, and the relief that they experience is very powerful. And the growth for me in learning to forgive, learning to actually love without expecting something in return, even if that's like telling me the truth, has always been something that I've really cherished. And I know Simo and I have talked about that sometimes we expect, we don't realize it, but we do expect things in return. We expect to feel good about sometimes what we do. and to know everything about the people we're working with, to make assumptions about who they are. And it's a great experience of poverty and charity to realize that we don't need to know. We don't need to have control over that. And our job is to love. And so those were my thoughts.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Rochelle. And I kind of wish lots of people could hear what you said at the beginning, which I think is super important when you said that this work is precious and you feel your own the preference towards you. Because this is a work that seems like is a little bit hard to get people to risk themselves to enter in but you're saying that in fact it teaches you that you are preferred, which is pretty revolutionary.
Yeah.
Henry.
Yeah.
Hi. All right. So, Bishop Mark, you began with the recognition of your own powerlessness because you said, I'm paraphrasing now, you said, I don't know what I could give them when you started this prison ministry. You can correct me if I misremembered what you said, but I think that's pretty close. So this made two questions arise in me. I want to know, over time, did you discover what they were looking for in you? And second, and how did that discovery deepen or not your own faith?
Henry, could you ask especially the first question again, please?
Sure. Do you need the preamble or just the question?
No, just the question.
Okay. Over time, did you discover what they were looking for in you? And then the second question was, how did that discovery deepen or not your own faith?
Okay, I hope this answers your question. Even if it doesn't, it's true. Um, I I sort of became a father in the jail. You know, I in my parishes I had always had good relations with the parishioners. I always had elementary schools, and I never really felt sort of a visceral affection for those kids. I did right by them, but I wouldn't have died for them, you know. Um, and the tragedy, these these men at that time were the age of children that I would have had if I had had children. And the complications, the tragedy of the complications that of their lives, the difficulties. It awoke like a solicitude, like an affection for them that I had never felt before. And I think, oh, this is what it feels to have a son. And I am so grateful for that. Because I would have, I understand that they call priests fathers, and I think that's good and appropriate, but I never felt like a father until I started, caring about these men whose lives have been so compromised by the criminal justice system and by things they have done in many instances, I'm sure. But the opportunity to learn some of what they share, it just, they went from being headlines to people. And it was tremendously humbling for me at the age of, I was probably 50 or something like that. 55 maybe, I don't know. I was exactly 55. Well, that's pretty old to discover you're a father, of a 30-year-old guy. You know? It changed me very much. And as a matter of fact, it's why I chose my Episcopal motto, Ego ero ei in patrem. I will be a father to him. Um, so,
Well, thank you.
that-
Go ahead.
yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Well, that's a very beautiful answer. I appreciate that. Um, I'm still looking for that experience of being a father. But I also want to, besides thanking you for that, I want to thank you for the five-finger catechism, because I've been a catechist for 25 years and I love that summary.
Yeah, thanks. You need something quick, right? Because you might just have a couple minutes with the guy and you may never see him again, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
And it easily works into extemporaneous prayer. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for Jesus, the God man who gave his life for us on the cross, etc.
Great.
Well, Bishop, just you mentioned the time in jail is different. I think you also, in that last example you gave us, you also, in a way, reflect that God gives us the gift of time for our own growth and becoming free as free and fully ourselves as you express in your 50s to learn what it means to be a father. So that's also beautiful. Um, does anyone else want to jump in?
If I may, just
Please.
very quickly, and I offer as a caveat, I have a cold and I'm loopy on sinus medication, so I hope I don't say something completely bonkers and embarrassing. But the thing that I really appreciated from what Bishop Mark said is this idea, and I think this is just inherent in the idea of prison ministry and reentry work, is not giving up on people. The idea of forgiveness is not giving up on people, that there's still something of value there. And I would give two examples, one recent and one not so recent. One involving Bishop Mark himself. So apparently, he and I both do things for my nonprofit and another nonprofit called Catholic Prison Ministries Coalition. And apparently, Bishop Mark had emailed me, I don't know, a month ago, 2 months ago. And in the flurry of things, I just completely missed it. And it was an important email. And he could have just said, "Oh, this guy's an idiot," you know. He didn't do that. So today I noticed he had sent me another email. He said, "Oh, just to follow up, just to circle back." And in the email, I hope this is not embarrassing to Bishop Mark, and I don't think I misread this. There was like a little gentle correction in there about my having missed it before, and I needed that. Like I was very, very grateful for that. Um, so I was grateful that he didn't give up. And the other person would be Simonetta and her husband Joe, who were here. I met them when I was in prison. And we have some mutual friends, and I had met the other friends first from outside prison. And almost immediately they began, I hope Joe and Simo aren't embarrassed by this, but these other friends said, "Oh, we've got this friend who's an attorney in Brooklyn, and that's Joe. And he might be able to help you with your case." I had a very long sentence. And I said, no, that's not what our friendship's about. And plus I took a plea bargain. There's really nothing, it's ironclad. There's really nothing you can do. But they stayed after me and stayed after me, and they kept bringing it up. And I had been very transparent about the circumstances that led to my going to prison. Well, not just circumstances, things that I did. And I was afraid after a while that if I kept saying no, they would think I was hiding something, because they would say, "Oh, just let him look at your case and just see what he can do." If he can do anything. And so I was worried would think I'm just hiding something. So I said yes. And so Joe and Simonetta came down. You have to be on the visitation list. And Simonetta was supposed to be on the visitation list. She had been approved. She had submitted the paperwork. And but for whatever reason, when she got to the prison, there was a computer glitch or something, and she wasn't on the list, and they wouldn't let her in. Joe came in. They would not let Simonetta in. But she was persistent. She didn't give up on me. She didn't give up on the visit. And I think I think it involved maybe some manufactured tears. I'm not sure. But in any case, she was persistent, and Captain Savage, I remember his name, that was his actual last name, Captain Savage, eventually let her in. And so she came, we had a beautiful visit, and I thought at the time that Joe, I would authorize him to look at my case and whatnot, and that would be that. Like he would see there's really nothing to do, and that would be that. That was 2004. This is now 2026, and we're still friends. So I'm very taken with the idea of not giving up on people. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And anyway, I'm grateful for Bishop Mark for being here tonight.
My tears were genuine, and I was sobbing. Because after I don't know how many hours, I'm from New York, he's in North Carolina. I can't even stand up anymore. And this guy does not allow me to get in. And I start crying, really crying. And the Southern men, they just, they said, "Man, please do not do that." And I said, "Oh, well, actually, I told him that I was coming from Italy, which, it was possible. Not my noticeable, accent. And so he really believed, and he allowed me to get in. So that's the story. That was a beautiful story. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Joshua, for sharing that. Anyone else? Anyone else feel like they want to jump in? No, okay. If not, this is I think a good place to end. This was a very rich first kind of encounter among us all and moment of reflection. And I think we are all left with a lot to continue to reflect upon. So, Bishop Mark, that's a big gift for us as we approach Palm Sunday and Holy Week ahead. So you've given us a lot to think about. And I think also, I mean, you kind of illuminated a side of Jesus in his own growth as a man, his humanity that I in particular, I mean, I will be thinking a lot about, I think, and I think it allows us also to become closer to him in our shared humanity. So thank you, everyone. I think Cecilia's putting up this little screen here, just to say, if you're not already connected with us as the Restorative Freedom Initiative, please do reach out to us. We have just a very simple newsletter that we send out every couple of months, not to bombard anybody, but just to kind of share good news of what's happening in this work, in this space. And if you have any reflections or stories from your ministry, whether it be unofficially a part of Restorative Freedom Initiative or not, feel free to reach out to us to share that. That is part of what we think our role is to keep us all engaged and motivated and really perceiving the beauty of this work and what it offers to each of us. So feel free to reach out to us. Simonetta's email and phone number even are there. She likes to get phone calls. But thank you all so much. Thank you, Simo, for your passion for this and for bringing us together, and Bishop Mark for your time and your words and your vulnerability in sharing all of that with us and for everyone else. So I wish you all a good evening and a good Holy Week, and hopefully we can do this again soon. Good night.
Thank you, Bishop Mark. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you so much. Good night. Take care, Simo. Thank you, Bishop Mark. Good night.